I will use it until the day that I die, because I just want to be continually opening my mind and opening my heart. And to me, psychedelics are the greatest tool possible for that.
Welcome to the Shift Within podcast. I'm your host, Alice. I'm from the Inner Shift Institute, and I'm here to guide you on a journey inside of your mind. Our podcast is a platform for catalyzing both inner and outer shifts using the power of psychedelics and powerful therapeutic tools. Welcome to your new beginning. Welcome to your new life. Welcome to our podcast, where we talk about the subconscious mind, the mind-body connection, and psychedelic healing. Today we have a special guest, Jessica Piff. She is a self-love coach, and we are going to speak about how to love yourself, her work, and also her experience with psychedelics. Welcome, Jessica. It's so nice to have you here.
Hello. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Can you share a little bit about your background and how you became a self-love coach?
Yeah, so I became a self-love coach because of my own personal journey. So I spent a large majority of my life really struggling with things like fear, guilt, and shame. And it was hitting rock bottom when I was 25 and feeling really depressed and even having some suicidal thoughts that made me decide I really needed to change my life. And the biggest issue that I thought would be a problem and that I thought would help myself would be learning to love myself and learning to discover who I was. And I became a coach in 2022. I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I was actually working as a coach for a crypto education company online. And I knew I wasn't that passionate about crypto, and I knew I was super passionate about self-love. And so I decided to become a self-love coach, because it is my number one passion, is helping people, and especially helping people overcome things like fear, guilt, and shame, and discover who they are and learn to love themselves. And that's how I became a coach, just through my own life experience.
Sounds incredible. Can you tell me, how would you define self-love?
Yeah, and I'm really glad you asked this question, because I think I would have used to answer this question quite differently. But in the year and a half or more of coaching, and especially since in recent years, in this year, I kind of switched my coaching method. And so now I would define self-love as a habit. And a lot of people, myself included, used to really think that self-love is more of an emotion or more of a feeling. Like we think, oh, self-love, it's this feeling, it's this emotion. But what I've come to learn through my own experience, and especially through working with lots of clients over the last few years, is that self-love is a habit. And it's actually a habit of our thoughts. And it's about learning how to respond to our thoughts and respond to our circumstances in life in a loving way. And this is how it's more of a feeling, like the feeling of self-love is actually more of a feeling of peace. Whereas to me, self-love is more of a habit, and it's a more of a way of thinking and being able to lovingly respond to the negative thinking, or the beliefs that we have, that we hold about ourselves, maybe the beliefs of unworthiness or inadequacy or whatever it is that we feel is holding us back from a sense of self-love. It's about actually being able to lovingly respond to those, and that's what then cultivates a feeling of peace. So that's really how, I would define self-love now, is that it's more of a mental habit and a feeling of peace, of inner peace, and being at peace with who you are and, what you've experienced in your life, and just being able to come to a constant state of gratitude for your life.
Mm-hmm. That sounds really lovely. This is absolutely wonderful definition of self-love. And do you think this is now you have a lot of experience with it and you're guiding clients through, is this an ongoing thing? Is this a habit? Like, how long does it take to cultivate this habit? Is it an ongoing, lifelong thing that we have to continue cultivating?
Absolutely. It's a lifelong journey. I call it a practice, It's a self-love is a practice. And especially, I've come to realize that when you're dealing with things like shame or, guilt, these things that really develop in your childhood, even when you cultivate self-love, like you learn how to respond to your negative thoughts, you learn how to say, oh, these beliefs that I hold about myself, about my unworthiness, or, that I don't deserve love, or whatever your particular and personal narrative is, even when you learn how to respond lovingly to these things, they will still pop up throughout your life. There will always be things that happen to us that are out of our control. And it might trigger this feeling of unworthiness, or whatever it is that you feel like is the lack of self-love. There's going to be things throughout your whole life that might trigger that. But because it's a habit, it's about always coming back to that anchor point of the loving responses, and just like it's a constant practice of returning to the loving response, and I think as far as how long does it take to cultivate that, it really varies, I would say, between each individual. For myself, I've been on this journey for 7 years. And, I do feel like I'm very grateful every single day. I am very grateful. I really love who I am. I love my life so much. I just love life in general. I think the human experience is just one of the most amazing phenomena ever. I think it's so amazing to be a human and to be able to experience everything that we do. But even to this day, I go through circumstances, or I have experiences that bring up these feelings of worthiness, or more so the thoughts, they bring up the thoughts, or maybe certain behaviors or certain patterns will resurface. And then I'll say, okay, I can notice that I am experiencing some old patterns. And then I say, okay, let me take a look at this and see what's really going on, And then I'm like, okay, I can see based on certain behaviors maybe that I need to come back to the practice of self-love, back to the habit of lovingly responding to certain thoughts or certain beliefs. And it's a lot of investigation as well. I think that's a big component of self-love, is this key of curiosity. And this is how we cultivate the practice of self-love, is through curiosity. And instead of, beating ourselves up, or maybe going deeper into shame or deeper into this sense of blaming, we can get curious about it. And then, because one thing I've noticed throughout my own journey and also working with clients is that, I think a lot of people, and even myself, I use this language a lot, that self-love is it's a healing journey. But I feel like there's this element that healing can feel very heavy, and you can feel like you're kind of always trying to reach the surface, if that makes sense. Whereas I feel like it's about when it comes to cultivating self-love and realizing that it's not a destination to get to. It is a constant practice, but as long as you cultivate this sense of curiosity for it, it no longer feels heavy or dense. And when you do get into those moments where these old feelings rise or these old thoughts arise, instead of feeling oh, is it ever going to be over? I feel like life does come with some pain, and if we can accept the fact that that is just part of life, we don't have to suffer as much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like I've been on a bit of a tangent there.
No, I completely agree with you, and that's exactly what I worked with my clients, with our clients at the Inner Shift Institute. That's how we approach things too, and this is how I healed my depression. I used to have a depression, and I had lots of negative thoughts, and it was me responding to them with curiosity instead of going against them and starting that inner war. That it started to get better and better and better, and today I do still have these negative thoughts creep in sometimes, but then if you respond with curiosity, instead of going down a negative spiral, it changes everything. So it I never have long periods of depression anymore, just because of that curiosity. So
yes,
I
exactly.
completely agree. The curiosity is the key, and and becoming that observer of your inner world who can or who can also step in as like the loving parent that we didn't have, and calm us down internally. Yes. What would you say? So many people in the Western world have a lack of self-love. What would you say is the reason for that?
I would say a big part of a lack of self-love is a sense of inadequacy, which kind of ties into like fear, guilt, and shame. To me, the like antithesis of self-love is fear, guilt, and shame, which they're kind of all intertwined. But I believe that it's because we live in a world that is very focused on production and like productivity, and not very focused on simply being. And as we are human beings, and especially when we are children and we are just being a human being, but we live in this world that really, like I said, really focuses on productivity. So as we are going through our childhood, our parents, who are also just part of society and doing what they were taught, and it's more of a collective thing, that I feel like it's this sense that we always have to be doing something to be worthy, or to be accepted, or to be, just worthy, I think, is really the bottom line, is that it all has to do with our sense of self-worth. And because we live in a world that is so focused on productivity and production, if we're not in that constant state of productivity, unintentionally, I think our parents or our peers or just society at large causes this feeling of, I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy just as I am. As who I am as a complete being isn't enough, because I have to be doing something, or I have to be something that I'm not.
And even the people that are doing a lot, they still have the feeling, because they constantly feel like they're not doing enough, right? And that comes from the childhood, from that child self that feels, if I could just do more, then I would be worthy, and then maybe my parents would have more time for me, or would be more present, right? And so we become adults, and like we see even people that are super successful and have achieved so many things in life, and they still feel like they're not doing enough, or they don't feel successful, because they don't have that innate feeling in them. It was never cultivated, and that's so sad that we have this society, and I would really love to change that.
Oh, I mean, me as well. That's, since I was a little girl, I've always just said, I'm here to be of service to humanity, and I want to make a really big impact on the world. And for me, there's no greater message to share and spread than that of love. Mm-hmm. And that's how just the love coach was formed, was that it doesn't matter if it's self-love or romantic love or whatever love. It literally, love is, the underlying frequency of everything, and it unites everything, and it is so powerful. And love can truly, it's such a cliche saying, but love truly can conquer all. And this is something that I believe in every single cell of my being, and it is why for the rest of my life I want to spread the message of love, and it's especially, like I said, when it comes to self-love, we think that it's this emotion or this feeling, but it's more like the feeling of love. If I can describe what does self-love feel like, as I mentioned before, it feels like peace, like inner peace, and being able to, especially in regards to what you were saying about how there's certain people out there who are very externally successful, but they still don't feel worthy inside, and it's because they're still attaching their worth to something external, and we all know that there's nothing guaranteed. Like, everything in life is uncertain, and also everything in life is impermanent. So if we're attaching our worth or even our love to something that's external, it's likely that we might feel that void inside still, because we need to connect to ourselves and to our whole being, us as an individual being. And when we can connect to that, and when we can find peace in that, that is self-love. Realizing that, like, we as who we are, not the things that we do, not who we are in terms of our external identity, like our jobs or our relationships or, anything like that. Like, those aren't the things that make us who we are. We are who we are inside our hearts. And so it's about, coming into that internal space and being able to rest in there. Find rest and peace inside ourselves.
That sounds like heaven. Heaven on earth. Yes, and it is a habit that we need to cultivate, because how beautiful would it be if we could just constantly be in that state?
Yeah, and I mean, this is the greatest thing, like, in my own experience, in my own journey, before I ever came to the concept of self-love, because before I was, I don't know, I guess 26, I didn't really have this concept of self-love, actually. But I knew that one thing I really desired in my life, well, there were two things that I really desired in my life from being young, and that was freedom and inner peace. These were the two things that I really was like yearning for. And as I started my self-discovery and self-love journey, this was like how I kind of realized, like, oh yeah, like the pathway to that is actually like, it's like a two-sided coin, in the sense that self-love is the pathway to peace and freedom, but peace and freedom is also the pathway of self-love. Like, they're really intertwined. And so I feel like, and what I've noticed for my own self is that, like, desiring this sense of inner peace and this sense of freedom, which for me, freedom was never really about external freedom, even though I've always been a traveler and I do really like external freedom. But for me, what freedom always represented was like freedom from my own limiting fear and guilt and shame. It's these things, like the fear, guilt, and shame, that was like trapping me, and this is something, like, I know I'm not alone in this, I know that this is a very big collective issue that so many people in the world, like massive amounts of people in the world, are just trapped by fear, guilt, and shame. And what that manifests as negative thinking, it manifests as toxic behaviors that don't need to be like terribly toxic, like, or, even just kind of like not doing a self-care routine, like that is like, you can just investigate and look at something as simple as that. Like, how often do you tend to your needs? Like, if you are not tending to your needs, chances are there's fear, guilt, and shame there that's holding you back from realizing how much you deserve to tend to your needs, and how important it is to tend to your needs, and how loving it is to tend to your needs. All of these things are so intertwined. And like, within my own journey, I've found this state of inner peace and freedom, and also self-love, it is really blissful. And the longer I went through my own journey, the more I found myself being in this blissful state for longer and longer periods each time. And I know that this is possible for anyone, because like, I am just a normal person like everyone else, and it's not like a superpower or anything. It is just a habit that you can cultivate. And that is the really cool thing, and something that I believe so strongly in, is that as time goes on, there will be more and more people stepping into this place of love. And more people opening their hearts to this state of inner peace, which is just so blissful and like heaven, as you said, and we can all really be living in heaven. This is what I believe. I believe it's possible for everyone to experience this, because it's innate within us, and it's just about kind of remembering that is us, that we are love.
Exactly. And I also believe that, like more and more people are going down this path now. And I believe that we as a society can hopefully soon integrate self-love and this inner peace into our societal beliefs, into our value system. Because, that would change the world so much if we could look at our fear, guilt, and shame and overcome it, transform it, and care towards it, instead of pushing it away, looking at it and taking care of it. We can create the biggest change possible. Maybe we're going to transform our whole society.
Absolutely, I believe it's possible. I mean, I'm very optimistic. I'm a huge optimist, and I don't actually have any fear for the future. I believe that we create our reality, and the more and more of us who can believe in a really hopeful, beautiful, loving future, the more that will become our truth. And, I really do believe in the power of the people and in the collective. And I think, as time goes on, and for thankfully things like the internet, all these little micro communities around the world that are living more in peace and also living more in connection, because to me that's the key. That's the key to our beautiful future is through connection. The more and more that we can help each other, the more and more that we can support one another and kind of overcome this idea of every man for himself. That's how I really believe that we're going to create the future that we all really deeply desire in our hearts, is through connection and collaboration and cooperation, and just really coming together more as, one human family, basically.
Absolutely. One thing that I wanted to ask is, so you've had psychedelic experiences in your past. Can you tell us a little bit about them, and also how they influenced your journey of self-love?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I really owe, all of the things that, who I am as a person, and all of the things that I've done in my life, I legitimately owe them to psychedelics. So I did my first psychedelic experience when I was 18. And previous to this, I was an alcoholic. And I was not in a good way in my life, and I was super young. I was 18. And I was really just I was super depressed. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any purpose in my life. And I was just very lost and very disconnected. And a person who I knew at this time, a woman who I'd just become friends with actually, asked me if I wanted to go to a concert on Halloween, and said that they were going to go to this concert and take acid, LSD. And at the time, I didn't know anyone who had ever done any drugs. So I was a little hesitant to it, but, and this is going to sound really silly, but I decided to go ahead with it because it was very cheap. And so I said yes. And the moment that it kicked in was just the most life-changing moment for me. And I literally just started crying and laughing hysterically. And for the first time in my life, in that moment, I felt joy and I felt peace. And like I said, since I was really little, what I really yearned for within me was peace, inner peace. And the moment that the LSD kicked in, my heart burst open, and I just felt so much joy and so much peace. And I was just wow, at the time I was super insecure. I was just drowning in self-hatred, I wasn't in a good way. a good place. And in that moment, LSD just like, it completely wiped everything away. Like all I could see and feel was just this like pure white light and just like pure love and pure joy and peace. And I said to my friend who I was with at the time, I was like, now that I know this is possible, like how I feel right now, I want to feel like this for the rest of my life. And I was like, and now that I know it's possible, now that I can feel this, like I'm going to strive to feel like this for the rest of my life without substances. You know, like I was like, it is my mission for the rest of my life to feel this level of joy and peace in my heart. And I mean, now 18. So yeah, 14 years ago that was. And to this very day, I am still on my everyday mission to feel that level of joy and peace in my heart every single day.
That's incredible. I love when you get insights like that, like experiences like that on psychedelics, and then they know, like they show you it is possible, and then they bring you on that path to bring it into your everyday life, and you are on that path, and I can see and hear how you have cultivated so much of that inner peace already in your daily life. So it's so beautiful that the LSD was a catalyst for that. Did you have more experiences after that?
Absolutely. I mean, to this very day, I still utilize psychedelics in my life. And at this point, I've done I think I might have done every psychedelic out there at this point. Because few months ago, about 6 months ago, I tried Bufo, which was kind of like the last one on the list that I hadn't tried yet. But I do think, I mean, psychedelics are my medicine, you know. They have really helped me make some massive transformations in my life. And even since living here in Thailand for the last year and a half, I went on a very, like an 8-month-long like psychedelic therapy journey, because I was still, there was one big main fear that I was still really battling. And I was like, it's the last one that's like really holding on, you know, which was the fear of disappointing men. And I realized that I had all these patterns, like many different patterns and many different behaviors that seemed quite innocent in my life. You know, I was a big people pleaser, and I really struggled to voice a lot of things in my life. And in the last year and a half, when I first came to Thailand, and I'm always doing a lot of inner work and a lot of self-work, because this is my favorite thing, and I really love it because of that curiosity. You know, I find it really fun and really interesting to dive deep into my subconscious and just see like what's going on in there. But yeah, I just realized that the last thing that I really wanted to free myself from was silence, you know, and this pattern that I had in my daily life, where I was so afraid of disappointing, well, people in general, but like going through the rabbit hole, I came to realize, you know, it was really men, because of my relationship with my father when I was really little, you know, and I have a really loving dad, and I have a great relationship with him. So it was something that I had never really uncovered, because I was like, well, I didn't have a bad childhood, like, you know, these things. But I realized I have this intense fear of disappointing people, and so therefore I was silent a lot. You know, there was so many things that I needed and wanted to express throughout my life and in my daily life, throughout all my different relationships, that I would like hold back because of this fear of disappointing others, and how this was a big part of my identity, you know. And I was like, this is the last thing that I feel like I really need to overcome to really reach that ultimate state of freedom, you know. And so I started working with LSD again. I mean, I've done lots of different psychedelics, but for me, I don't know if it's because it's the first one that I did or, you know what, but it really, LSD is my medicine of choice. You know, it has created the most profound transformations and healings that I've had of any substance I've done. And it was really cool because once a week, I was taking quite a small dose, not quite a microdose, but not like a full dose of LSD every week for 8 months. And it was really cool because by the end of it, like at the 8th month, I did it again. And I had just the most profound experience of like absolute dissolution. And I saw everything in existence, laid out before my eyes. And I felt like everything about me, who I am, like Jessica, was just completely dissolved. And I was just like, wow, like we are all everything and nothing at the same time, And I was really able to just like look at this fear that I had of disappointing others and like just meet that fear with so much love of just being able to see how like my biggest value in life is honesty and transparency. And I was just like, in order to embody that, I need to let go of this fear of disappointing others. Because it's not loving. It's not loving to me, and it's also not loving to the other person, And I had to really reframe this thought because I had believed, maybe not mentally, but it was still a deep belief of mine that by keeping silent, I was protecting the other person. I didn't want to disappoint them or hurt them or something. And I realized through using LSD and really diving deep into my own heart and also very deep into my subconscious that the most loving thing that I could do for myself and for the collective, and for all these other people who I love, is to be honest and to express myself. And so, to this day, I still use LSD because I just think it is just the most profound tool out there for making changes, for rewiring the brain and also really opening the heart. It is why I will use it until the day that I die, because I just want to be continually opening my mind and opening my heart. And to me, psychedelics are the greatest tool possible for that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing this story and for being so open and vulnerable. And I completely agree, openness and transparency are like a really big value for me as well. And sometimes we don't even notice that we're not telling the truth because we're so in our habitual way of being that we have adopted in our childhood for reasons that are, even if we had a good childhood, we might have still adopted these patterns, copied them from our parents or from someone else in our surroundings. So psychedelics are just an amazing tool to look at our blind spots and to see, it's kind of looking from the outside in and seeing ourselves in a way that we have never seen ourselves before, and that why it becomes so much easier to look at these habits and patterns that we're so used to that we're not even seeing that we're doing them, right?
Absolutely.
In your psychedelic experiences, did you also experience something unexpected or surprising?
In more recent times, well, I don't think this is really that surprising or unexpected, but in my more recent experiences, something that has been really coming through for me, which I found really comical in a sense, is this idea that our consciousness is quite a playground, and that we have this ability, consciousness itself, or at least our consciousness, it's so malleable, we can, well, maybe not our consciousness, but our beliefs, our beliefs and our perceptions and the way that we think and the way that we go through life is very malleable. And so in recent experiences, I've just been really having this massive insight of just how life is like a playground, and we really do have this amazing ability to just have fun and play and tap into our creativity and our imagination, and just how, we kind of are taking life a little bit too seriously sometimes, and it's good to just let all that go and just like be, you know, more like a kid, like where you're just being and you're playing, and, you know, they've got they're using their imagination to play with their toys, or maybe they don't have anything to play with, but they're still just enjoying existing, you know, they're just enjoying being. And so that's been like a really big insight that has come through to me a lot recently, is just how like important it is to let go of the seriousness of everything and just come back to this idea of play and imagination and creativity, and, you know, just how we don't really have to suffer. You know, we can actually choose not to suffer, even if our circumstances are really, you know, less desirable. You know, we don't have to suffer, and we can always see something beautiful in things that are really, you know, ugly or painful. There's always something beautiful in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really love that you say that. And we do take life too seriously, and even when we're on the spiritual path, we start taking spirituality too seriously when everything is just like we can make things much more light and much more fun. I completely agree with you. And I always say the difference between pain and suffering is the story we tell about the pain. Because if there's just pain, then the story, if we have the story, oh, this pain shouldn't be there, this pain is really bad, well, that's when it becomes very difficult to endure. But if it's just pain, and what you said at the beginning, the curiosity, if it's pain and we're curious about the pain, and we look at the pain and what does this pain feel like in my body, what does this pain create in my life, and if there's no story attached to it, then it's just pain, and it's nothing bad about the pain, and we can maybe even enjoy the pain. And if we can do that, life becomes so much easier and so much more fun.
Really fun. And that is just like, you know, it's something that I'm a big like advocate for, is actually, learning how to enjoy, you know, pain or discomfort, or, you know, whatever we want to label it as, you know, just being able to sit with basically uncertainty, you know, or like sit with pain, which is uncertain. You know, pain is uncertain. We never know, how long is it going to last? Like, what is this going to bring? What's, you know, like where is this going to take me? And it's just, as you said, you know, that curiosity, oh, where is this going to take me? You know, and we can learn how to actually enjoy that process, or enjoy the uncertainty of pain. And it's through curiosity, actually, that we can find that enjoyment. And also through, you know, just not taking things so seriously. Like we all have pain. This is just part of the human experience, you know. It doesn't have to be something that we suffer because of the pain, you know. And I think it's like kind of what you said as well. Like, for me, what I always say is like, suffering comes from unacceptance. You know, like if we have the pain but we can't accept it, that's what causes, you know, to me, that's, in my opinion, that's what causes suffering. But if we have pain and we accept, okay, there's this pain here, and then we get curious, as you say, you know, and we can accept that it's there, then we don't have to suffer. You know, instead we can just get through our life, you know, one foot in front of the other. Like, things are always moving, and we can move forward with pain even, you know. It doesn't have to be something that is so, dense, you know. I feel like pain can feel really dense, but if we have this sense of curiosity, as we've talked about, and the sense of acceptance, it doesn't have to feel so dense, you know, and it allows more enjoyment in our life.
Absolutely. And I would love to let that stand as like the last piece of this podcast, because it was such a beautiful ending, so full of wisdom and playfulness. And I want to thank you for joining this podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. These are all of the topics that I really love, so I'm always happy for an opportunity to discuss it.
Thank you. And for our listeners out there, you can find Jessica on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube as Jess the Love Coach. And you can find us, the Inner Shift Institute, on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok under Inner Shift Institute. And please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more interesting conversation and insights. And if you have any feedback or would like to have some questions answered, please reach out, and your feedback means a lot to us. And I hope that we will see you again in future episodes. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to the Shift Within podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe for more insightful conversations. Keep asking, keep understanding, keep shifting within, and see you next time in the next episode.